All right. Welcome. Let's see. We got the stream up here. Looks like it's going. Camera seems to be in focus. All right. Wonderful. Welcome, guys. I'm sure some more people will tune in here soon. But let's go ahead and kick this thing off here. The big topic for today is we're going to be talking about morning routines because everybody in the self-improvement space is obsessed with morning routines. So that'll be the main topic. But before we do that, I'm going to cover a few thoughts. I'm going to just basically try this thing out where I got a few notes that I make throughout the week, some things that I observe that are on my mind. And I'm going to go through those first. And hopefully, we have a good time here. And if you ever get any questions or anything, you got to say, just drop it in the chat. Happy to respond to it. What's up, Mike? Glad you're here. All right. So the first thing that I've been thinking about lately actually is this issue of overthinking, of rumination. And it's something that I've seen a pretty big reaction to whenever I work with guys in the Frontline Man community around this. It seems to be actually a big problem for a lot of guys where they just ruminate, they just spiral, they just think about things that aren't really useful to them. A lot of times it'll be about spiraling about something in the past where they will, replay events in their head over and over again. Or they'll go, way past back in the past and try and figure out how they could have done things differently. Or, if they have a negative interaction with someone, they'll just go through it over in their mind. So that's one kind of thing where a guy will just replay events, in their life. But then the other kind that I've seen too is where guys will they'll just spiral into their own emotionality. They'll get kind of caught in this pattern where they think that they need just more inner work, right? They think that, I just need to keep trying to figure out my mindset. I got to figure out how to shift this emotion. And they'll go deep into their self-talk and they'll spend hours journaling and things like that. And this is something I found myself in for a while too. And I think it's particularly a trap for the people who are interested in deep self-development work. FedFan says, yeah, that's me to a T. And it's interesting because you study about the power of mindset, and you start seeing how much self-talk improves your life when you improve your self-talk. And it creates this sort of, I think, tendency to just believe that more is better. And that's where I was at, when I was really into this kind of stuff, kind of first when I started to get into coaching, and it's I can just coach myself 24/7 in my own head, and I can unlock optimum, performance and all this kind of thing. But what I found is that that's not really how it works. And you end up getting trapped in this scenario where you think that you have the power to make yourself feel amazing at all times if you could just crack this internal code. And what I discovered from that is that if you go down that pathway, you just keep trying to make yourself feel good by shifting your thoughts or, replaying certain things in your mind or whatever, you're actually just going to make your life a lot worse. Because mindset work, and even just going back to the past or whatever, it's a means to an end. All right. If we could reach enlightenment just looking inside of our own head constantly, then we would have no use to actually live. We could just press the right buttons, psychologically speaking, and then we could release a peak experience, and then we would have no incentive to actually go and live. Right. So we're not wired like that. We're not wired to be able to fulfill ourselves through inner work. So inner work, that's just a means to get ourselves to take good action. And when we can get ourselves to take good action, guess what? The reward for that is good feelings. So if you find yourself spiraling in rumination or just thinking too much about inner work and things like that, my big recommendation to you is to just stop and ask yourself, is this what I want to waste my brainwaves on right now? Is this what I want to spend my psychological time and energy and intentionality on? Okay? Because a lot of times if you just ask yourself that question, you realize that I've got a finite amount of conscious awareness per day, and I could spend it on a million different things. Is this thing that I'm thinking about right now actually useful to me? Or am I better off going and doing something? Or am I better off just thinking about something altogether different, right? sometimes it's just think less, do more. Like, I'm not saying don't think. Obviously you want to do this, but if you struggle with this kind of work, one of the things that, a guy who was just struggling with this in my Frontline Man community, I recommended to him is just save all your inner work, like for one morning session and one evening session where you kind of cap your journaling at 15 minutes. And then, after that, just focus on thinking less. Just like try and have love in your heart and then do what you want to do, right? And if you do something, if that's kind of the approach you take, that's going to solve 80% of the internal problems that you're, dealing with anyway, that you create anyways. Just take good action, have good intentions, and then let the chips fall where they may. So I would highly recommend anyone who struggles with that kind of stuff to just try and pull back a little bit, get a little bit, pull your head out of your own existential butthole. It's not a good place to live. And I know, because I've been there. Now, the problem that guys run into, which kind of leads into my next point here, to do this, is that they then worry. They worry that if they don't, look at everything from every angle, then they are missing out on a lot of opportunities. They're leaving growth on the table, or at worst, they're setting themselves up for some kind of disaster. And so they feel like, oh, I need to think about this stuff. I need to obsessively put this stuff over and over in my mind. This is for the people who tend to ruminate on the future, on what could go wrong, worst case scenarios, all of this kind of stuff. And that's a normal thing, right? And I worry that in some cases, the normalization of worry is actually part of the issue. I can't even tell you how many movies and stuff they talk about. You got the hero, he's on his journey and he's afraid. And they always say, oh, fear is normal. Oh, of course it's normal for you to be afraid. But it's bravery is when you confront the fear and you still act anyway, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not discounting that fear and worry is a natural process, but I also don't think it's a good one that necessarily we should be embracing. And some people, they even kind of wear it as a badge of honor. Sometimes maybe you'll hear mothers or fathers or whatever, they constantly worrying about their kid, and their kid's like, stop worrying about me so much. And they're like, oh, I just worry because I care. And I get that, right? Makes sense. But me as a Christian, okay, I got to actually look at, what does Jesus say, first of all? Okay. So you just Google this. I Googled, all right, how often does Jesus say, do not worry, or do not be afraid, or fear not? Okay. By some interpretations, depending on how I guess you translate things or whatever, he says, do not be afraid 365 times throughout the Bible, which is often considered to be the most repeated command in the Bible, period, which is kind of crazy. Okay. We're sitting here saying, oh, being normal and afraid and all that kind of stuff is a default. You should just use it, or, get used to it, or use it as a signal, etc. And Jesus is just nah, don't do that. Don't be afraid. And, if you look at the saints, which me as a Catholic, I do look at, but even if you don't think that they're, you don't buy into the whole sainthood thing, or even Christianity in general, these people have had major impacts on people's lives. And I find their wisdom very interesting. So it's Francis de Sales, he has said that anxiety is the greatest evil that can befall a soul except for sin. So he's saying, other than actually doing bad things, one of the worst things that can happen to you is just to be anxious. And makes it sound like it's a choice. And then you got St. John of the Cross, who says, the soul who walks toward God and does not shake off his worries or control his passions is like someone pushing a cart uphill. And it's true, because when you're constantly afraid, or you're worried, or you're thinking about how things could go wrong, or maybe not even consciously doing it, but just allowing a deep-seated anxiety to fester inside of you, it just drains you. It really does. It is like pushing a cart uphill. It's I've noticed this in my own content creation process. I've made a lot of videos and courses and stuff through the years, and I've spent a lot of hours doing this kind of work. And what I found is one of the biggest things that has an impact on how long I can work in a focused state and how productive I can be in that state is, how worried am I that I'm not going to figure it out, that I'm not going to produce something good? Because anytime I have anxiety or worry about that, I get tense. And then it becomes an uncomfortable process. And it can only last for a little while before I'm like, oh, I'm just getting frustrated and I want to walk away. And, I get creative blocks and all this kind of stuff. But if I just don't worry, I let it go, I can go for forever because it's fun. I like it. And, then you got Padre Pio, his famous quotes like, pray, hope, and don't worry. And he says, live in peace and do not be deceived by the devil. And so as I've reflected on this, and this is kind of lined up with some other personal, intuitions that I've stumbled into lately, is that I'm beginning to treat worry and anxiety almost as like a demonic attack, like a force of evil in my life. Because what I've come to understand is that my level of worry and fear is directly proportionate to my amount of faith. So if I believe that God is good and he's totally going to take care of me, and even if bad things happen, he'll eventually turn them into good things, and that growth or some other thing that I don't understand yet is going to come of it. Okay, if I fully believe that, and that's at 100, then my worry's at 0. But if my faith is low, I'm starting to doubt God. Like maybe he does just want me to suffer. Maybe he doesn't exist. Maybe, he, just allows evil in the world and he kind of gets a kick out of it. I've had some pretty significant pain in my life, and these thoughts, they come up. And as my faith in God's goodness and his providence and his care for me goes down, well, guess what? My worry increases dramatically. And so, I think that if you just decide to not worry, and you decide to have faith in a greater scheme, a greater power, however you want to frame it in your mind, then not only is your life going to get better, not only are you going to be able to do more because you have less stress constantly draining you, you're going to be able to have more fun, you're going to be able to do it more fluidly. And the reality is, it's just there's so little in your life that you can control. You can just take your actions and then let the chips fall where they may, and then you respond to the next piece. So I would just encourage you guys to try that. See what would happen if you lived with 0 worry. And when that part of you that inevitably will come up and start screaming and feel anxious and stuff like that, have a little conversation with it. As long as you decide, here's what I want to have happen here, here's what I'm going to try and do to pursue it, and then you just let the rest go, see what you can do with that. To me, that's been really changing my life recently. So figured I would share it with you. So the final thing I want to talk about before we get into our big topic of morning routines is just a potential, maybe shift somewhat in the content that I'm going to be doing moving forward. Because I think part of the issue that, I've had growing the channel, some of you guys have, followed me for a long time. A popular sentiment that makes me feel good when I hear it is oh, you should be so much bigger than you are. Your channel should blow up more. And I think part of the reason why it hasn't is just because I haven't really targeted a niche super specifically. Once I left porn recovery, I kind of got a little too general, I think. And so, we've done some good stuff here and had a lot of fun with all of you. But I think, in order to really take my work to the next level, I'm going to have to get more targeted. I'm going to have to pick a specific kind of guy to really help. And so, I start thinking, well, what's the most sensible way to do that is, well, who am I, right? Because I can probably best speak to people who I'm like, right? And so I'm basically an entrepreneur and a father, right? And a husband. I'm basically an entrepreneurial family man. And yes, I'm a coach as well, but that really fits within the whole entrepreneurial sort of thing. And as I started thinking about the entrepreneurial family man, I realized that he's kind of a weird, different sort of dude, because it has a number of extreme elements to being an entrepreneur and a family man. The first is that you have, you're basically embracing this path of maximal responsibility, right? Because not only you're fully in charge of how much money you make, which determines how well you can, care for your family, but then also it determines how much your employees can make. And it also means that you have full control over how much positive impact you have on the people who you serve through your work. And not many other sort of positions have this, where there's just responsibility, the buck stops with you in pretty much every single thread in your life. If you work for someone, you've got to basically deal with the chain of command. And sometimes there's just a lot of stuff outside of your control. And so, it's just a different sort of thing. And with this responsibility comes the potential for maximal ROI, right? Like you can generate literally as much value in the world as you are skilled enough to create, right? Like there's no ceiling on how much an entrepreneur can make or how much influence they can gather. And so it's like, you can then do a lot with that money if you can succeed. I mean, like you just look at some of the, like probably the 3 most influential men in the world today. Who would they be? Probably Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Joe Rogan, maybe. I don't know. You can let me know if you think there's anyone else out there who would be more influential than them. But what are they? All 3 of them are entrepreneurial family men to at least some degree, right? Like, that's what Trump was. He was this business guy. And then he's very committed to his family. Elon, his family stuff's a little strange, but clearly he's invested in family. You can disagree with how he parents and handles his baby mamas and whatnot, but clearly reproduction and having a large family is important to him. And clearly he's an entrepreneur. And then Joe Rogan. I mean, like the dude is an entrepreneur, and he's got 2 kids and he cares a lot about them. I've heard people talk about him. He makes a lot of time for them, but then he does all of this other kind of stuff too. And it's like, so, the interesting thing is just like how much worldly influence you can have, but then you also have that extra influence of being able to create a family line, being able to create values and a genetic legacy that outlives you. Now, obviously with all this, it sounds cool, but then there's this massive failure rate that's associated with entrepreneurial activity. Right? Because something like 20% of businesses fail within the first year, almost 50% fail within the first 5 years. And then you've got these challenges where it's like, since the buck stops with you with everything, it's like you're pulled in a million different directions. You've got your own personal stuff like everyone has, your health, your fitness, your personal interests, that kind of thing. But then you've got your wife, and then you've got your kids, and then you've got your clients, and then you've got your team, and then you've got to do all the admin duties. Then you got to work in the business, like doing delivery. Then you got to work on the business, trying to figure out how to make it grow. And it puts you in this position where you're really forced to understand leverage. And this is just a topic that's massively fascinating to me. And I think it's really kind of the key of self-improvement as a whole, is learning how to master leverage. And this is part of like what I think the stuff I do at Frontline Man and our whole Frontline Man framework for performance is so interesting, is that it's something that's super high leverage. Like I developed it because I was struggling with all this stuff. I was pulled in a million different directions, stressed out of my mind. And I needed to figure out how could I get myself in order, focused, mindset in place, habits optimized in as little time as possible. Like how could I get the maximal return for the minimal investment? And when you're, a self-employed guy, you got a family, like this is everything. Like, can you 80-20 things, and then can you find the 80-20 inside of that 80-20 and the 80-20 inside of that 80-20 and find that point where you're just like, got that massive lever where a little bit of effort produces massive output. So I love this because, big ripple effect potential. It's really interesting. And I think there's a lot of guys who follow me who either are entrepreneurs themselves, they have families, and or they at least have aspirations in both of those regards. So if any of you find yourself interested in that kind of thing, let me know. I would love to hear like what sort of stuff you'd like me to talk about, or what kind of challenges you face. K-Dot says, Family Man is pushing it. Don't know what you mean. You're welcome to elaborate, though. Or maybe we'll come back to that later. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into our big topic for today, which is morning routines. And the reason why, let's just start here. A thing that has driven me nuts, like as a coach, is the idea that that's populated in a lot of guys' mind, is that your morning routine's got to look like some kind of influencer's Instagram reel. Ice baths, 4 a.m. wake up, followed by red light therapy, journaling for an hour, yoga, exercise, and then, apparently maybe at some point, by 3 p.m. you actually start your workday or whatever. And like most of this kind of stuff, I think, is just social media engagement bait. But like some people actually believe they need this. Especially people who are just like starting out, right? They're like, oh, I gotta copy these, high-end performers. I gotta copy their morning routine or else I'm sunk. And like, what I want to do today is really just try and cut through some of the nonsense and get down to really what moves the needle in your life when it comes to your morning routine, without wasting any time, without any BS stuff. And to do this, I'm going to cover a few big points today. The first thing is we're going to dispel the big lie about morning routines. Then we're going to explain the single universal golden law of morning routines. And there's really only one. And then we're going to walk you through a series of questions that will help you kind of craft your custom morning routine that fits you like a glove and helps you get to the next level in life. Okay. So I wish someone had done this with me when I first started working for myself, because it would have saved me a lot of trial and error and got my head right where it needed to be to get the most out of the beginning of your day. Because a lot of people say the day is won or lost within the first hour. And, that's not actually true at all. But there's some sense to it. Like you can have a bad hour in the beginning of your day and then still have a great day. Okay, that's obviously possible. But are you more likely to have a good day if you get it started on the right foot? Yes, absolutely. And that's why we're paying attention to this. So where we're going to start right now is with dispelling this lie that there is a right way to do morning routines, and that if you don't somehow follow some kind of special formula, then you're leaving massive gains on the table. And I think it's the whole, influencer stuff that feeds this. But then also there's like the popularity of particular kinds of like productized morning routines. So you've got like the Miracle Morning formula by Hal Elrod, I believe his name is. And then you've also got almost the identical formula in the 5 a.m. Club by Sharma. I forget his first name. And that one's, I thought that I couldn't even finish reading that one because the dude literally just like makes up a fantastical story about how one dude changed his morning routine and it changes his life and it's the key to everything. And Robin Sharma, that's his name. It's literally a fiction story to sell his his routine. And all of them, they're like the same thing. It's just like you got to wake up, you got to exercise, you got to pray and meditate, and then you've got to you do affirmations, and then you've got to learn something. And it's like this full hour morning routine of all these different things that are supposedly essential for you living your best life. And if that was all that was out there, okay, like, that's in some ways fine. Like, I'm not saying this is a bad routine. Some of you guys might do something like this and you might love it. Fantastic. I'm glad it works for you, and I'm sure it does work for some people. But then you got people who are up in the ante, right? Like you got the Joe Rogans up there getting in their extreme ice baths every morning. Then you've got the people who just keep getting up earlier and earlier, like Jocko gets up at 4:30 or Mark Wahlberg gets up at 3:30. And this isn't even like getting into all the, crazy supplementation, sauna, red light therapy, and all this other wild stuff that people are getting into. I think like at some point, like, it's just going to get so extreme. It's like before you know it, we're going to be seeing influencers get up at 1 a.m. to drink yak's blood before running a marathon, right? Because it's just, there's this one-upsmanship that happens just by the nature of social media. And then just the extreme kind of thinking where it's like, if some is good, then more is better. And at some point that just doesn't hold true. And to be clear, I'm not saying this stuff is bad. All right. Some of it might be fantastic, but it's contextual. Okay. It's person to person. And you got to really figure out what works for you, because one of the things that's often left out of these conversations about, what is the celebrity's morning routine is like, this is their routine after they're already a celebrity, most likely. Right. In almost every case, like this is how they behave after they've already achieved their success. So like, I don't know this for sure. I'm probably out there somewhere, but like Joe Rogan, okay, like his super cool morning routine. I don't think he was doing that when he was becoming famous, when he was building his success. Maybe some of it, but maybe not all of it, right? Like, I don't think he was doing ice baths then, right? So, like, what you're seeing is that sometimes someone who's already very successful, they have different needs than someone who is still aiming for their big breakthrough. Like, a simple example of this is just the cold water stuff. Like, that was a big fad back like 10 years ago when I first got into helping guys quit porn. Everybody's like, oh, you got to take a cold shower in the morning. Obviously now it's more extreme and it's ice baths, but back then it was the cold shower. And I remember doing cold showers every morning for 30 days. And what I found was that, after a while, it wasn't that hard, first of all. And then secondly, I didn't get anything out of it. All I got was that it made me like not really like getting up in the morning. It just like felt like this extra thing that I had to do. And I already had plenty of stress in my life. I was trying to build a business. I was trying to figure out my family life. I was trying to do all this kind of stuff. And my day was plenty stressful. And that was just another piece of stress to add to it. And I realized this is dumb. It's just making things harder for me. And so like that's kind of brings us to like the flip side of things. We think that everyone who's successful has an extreme morning routine, but that's not true. So I want to go through a few examples here. So here is an interview with Lex Fridman and Jeff Bezos, the guy who, built Amazon.
Next question. What's a perfectly productive day in the life of Jeff Bezos? You're one of the most productive humans in the world.
Well, first of all, I get up in the morning and I putter. I have a coffee.
Can you define putter?
Just like I slowly move around. I'm not as productive as you might think I am. I mean, because I do believe.
So, okay. Lex Fridman introduces Jeff Bezos as one of the most productive people in the entire world. And if you take the Alex Hormozy School of Productivity, which is, basically tied to how much work you get done, which produces money and everything like that, he literally is one of the most productive people in the entire world. And his first thing that he does in the morning is he gets up and he kind of putters around, he said. Well, that's not extreme. That's not going to make an Instagram reel go viral. But that's what he's doing. All right. So that's kind of weird. Let me see what else he says here. I can't remember if there's much more to this.
Believe in wandering, and I read my phone for a while.
Okay. Another big taboo. He reads his phone for a while. Right? How many times have you heard, don't look at your phone first thing in the morning, right? Okay. Well, this is what he's doing. And he's massively successable.
Read newspapers for a while. I chat with Laura and I drink my first coffee. So I move pretty slowly in the first couple of hours. I get up early.
So first couple hours, he moves slowly, and he does get up early. And there is, I think, something to be said about getting up early, particularly if you've got a day that is, packed later. Okay. And this is one of the key variables, like, should I work out in the morning? Should I not? It's like, well, how does it fit into the rest of your day? If it makes the rest of your day easier and better, well, then that might be something to really explore. But yeah, so we're seeing with Jeff Bezos, like, okay, he doesn't do anything extreme, but he's extremely successful. Is he the only one? No, he's not. I mean, if we look at Elon Musk's morning routine, okay, he wakes up around 7 a.m. and he begins his day with a donut. I heard it was just a small amount of a donut, like not a full donut, but I don't know. He eats something sweet. And then I know he also, where does it say? He immediately checks his phone for emergencies, and so he said checking his phone is a terrible habit that he's hoping to escape, yet he's been wildly successful with it. Okay. So, clearly that's not a die-hard rule. And then you've got Warren Buffett. You guys probably heard of him. He's like a massively successful investor. I think he's worth like $100 billion. And so he gets up early, which is not too surprising. But he doesn't go for coffee. He drinks literally straight Coca-Cola first thing in the morning. Apparently he gets about a quarter of his total calories from sweet soda. So I guess he's not optimizing his diet. And then his breakfast every single morning is he goes to McDonald's and he gets like the cheapest shit imaginable. He'll opt for the $2.61 breakfast consisting of 2 sausage patties. However, he'll put them together in one sandwich alongside with Coke. And he's also said that he'll go with the $3.17 bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit when the market is up. What a big spender. And obviously I know that exceptions do not just disprove the rule, okay? But I'm trying to show you that the people who are claiming that this ultra intense morning routine is necessary for success, it's clearly not necessary. It might help, it might not. And so like, what am I working toward here? Well, I'm working toward like what I believe is the golden rule of morning routines. And I think there's really only one big rule. And the rule is you have to make your day better, not worse. That's it. Make your day better. Don't make it worse. And if you can do that with your morning routine, then it's a successful morning routine. And there are like 3 kind of big pieces when you're evaluating this. And the first one I kind of already hit on, which is this idea of managing your willpower. So when I was getting up and doing cold showers every morning, that cost me willpower. And what I found is that as I was getting up and doing that and pushing through and doing this uncomfortable thing, even after it became like, pretty normal, it was still uncomfortable. I didn't look forward to it. There had to be some kind of like mental push to get myself to do it because it just doesn't feel as good as a warm shower. Doing that, I found it actually made me more likely to want to escape later in the day. And so how do we reconcile this with like the Joe Rogans who get up and do their ice bath, which is even harder and more intense? Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know Joe Rogan, but he seems to have a really cool life that he really likes. It sounds like he has a lot of fun. Like he makes money doing the things that he loves. Like he's doing comedy, he's doing his bow hunting, jiu-jitsu, MMA stuff. He gets to do his podcast, talk to just people he thinks are cool. Like, I don't know how much other hard stuff he's got in terms of like day-to-day activities. Not saying his life's perfect or easy or anything, but like he might need something in the morning that really pushes him because the rest of his life is kind of comfortable. I don't know. Don't know on that one. That's just a theory. But like, if you're not in that position, is it useful for you to make your morning more intense? Or would something easier be better for you? Next piece that we got to consider when we're trying to figure out, all right, how is my morning routine going to make my day better or worse? Is like, what are your circumstances? Because this determines really so much of it. So for example, there was a period in my life where my wife was sick. She was like really sick. And because of that, she couldn't really help with anything. Like, I had a, young daughter, I had a business. And so it was like all on me. And so like in that period, I had to be getting up at 5 a.m. and I would do my workout before my daughter woke up. Because if I didn't do that, then I was not going to get to that later in the day because I just didn't have the time. And so when I wasn't doing that, I just started feeling like crap because working out really does make you feel a lot better. It gives you a lot of energy and all this other kind of stuff. Obviously, we know working out's great, but like, so I was on that grind for a while. Early morning wake up, early morning workout, usually doing it while I was still dark outside. And that was what was the best morning routine for me at that period in my life. Now, some people say that's the best thing kind of ever. That's always a superior routine. But like what I realized is like, okay, once my wife got better, thank God, I didn't need to do that. Like I realized that I actually really liked working out when it was sunny out. I like doing it outside. And if you're doing it early in the morning, well, everything's covered in dew and that sucks because everything's wet and it's cold and you can't see anything. And so, it's just not enjoyable to do it like that. I actually like to use it as a way to either, break up my day or start it like, when it's a little bit later, like after I have breakfast, for example. So like, what are your circumstances and what really makes sense for improving your life when it comes to your circumstances that you're in right now and being willing to adjust that as those circumstances change. And then like the third big piece, if we really want to make our morning routine improve our life rather than hurt it, is that we have to avoid majoring in the minors. And this is the thing that guys who are into self-improvement, who would be potentially interested in watching this channel, this is something that we struggle with a lot, right? We'll get hooked into the fads. We'll get hooked into the checklists. We'll see what that celebrity does. We'll see what's trending, the thing that all the CEOs are doing or whatever. And we'll try to adopt it and just sort of shoehorn it into our life. And you got to watch out for that, because there are really only two things that really matter in your day. It's like, are you moving the needle on your important goals? And are you doing some things that you enjoy? Those are the two things that really are kind of like most important to living a good day. And so you got to ask, if you're adding something to your morning routine, does it do one of those two things? Does it really help you move the needle on your important goals? Or is it something that you legitimately enjoy, or help you do something that you legitimately enjoy later by taking care of something in the morning, right? So, these are like smaller things, like maybe you've heard of the journaling practice called morning pages. It's very popular for a while. I know Tim Ferriss promoted it, and it's just like you sit down and you gotta just write by hand, just free flow thought for 10 minutes straight. I've tried that. It was lame. It didn't do anything for me. I didn't really like it. Sometimes often I would just feel more tied in a knot by the end of it than when I started. Affirmations, they always felt kind of strange to me. They never really clicked. Then you've got guys, they'll come to me, they'll have all these, they're very like spiritual guys and they're moral guys, and they feel like, oh, I got to upgrade my prayer life. And they have like all these scripture readings that they expect themselves to do. And it just feels like this massive chore. And I ask them, like, how do they feel when they do it? They feel like, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I ask them, well, does it really feel like you're closer to God when you do it? And sometimes the answer is no. And it's like, well, what if you prayed in a way that actually resonated with you, right? What if you actually did something on a spiritual level that helped you actually connect in a way that really mattered to you? Maybe that's something that's more useful. Like, we don't want to just take this prescription from others and just assume it'll work. You're always welcome to run experiments, but don't just think that because someone else said it, it's right. Another thing is, like, you got to learn something every morning. Like, that's a popular one that's in a lot of morning routines. Is I got to spend 10 minutes reading or looking at the newspaper or blah, 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 blah. And like, does it actually make your life better? Or is it just another chore? For me, I'm not in a stage where I'm reading a lot. There are periods in my life where I was reading a ton, like devouring stuff. Right now, I don't feel like I need more input. I want more output. So, me doing that kind of stuff, it doesn't make sense. So you got to ask yourself, what really matters to me? Don't just put shit into your morning routine because you think you're supposed to. So that's really like that big piece of, like, the golden rule is make your day better, not worse. And so now let's start talking about how we could actually set up our morning routine. What sort of things do we need to discuss and decide on to build our best morning routine? Well, the very first question, which I think is probably the most important one that'll kind of clear all the low-hanging fruit, is how can you avoid making your day worse in the morning? Right? Like, if we can just cut out the things that are making our day worse, well, then that's automatically going to be a much better morning routine. So first big one that a lot of guys will jump to is scrolling. What does that look like for you when it gets bad? Because for a lot of guys, doing absolutely no scrolling in the morning, it makes their day worse. I know it does for me, right? There's kind of like a window where if I don't get to like just peek at what the news is, I don't get to see like what's kind of trending, what's happening in the world, I feel like that's a sacrifice, okay? But spending a couple minutes doing that, that's not making my day worse. In fact, it's just providing me with a little dopamine hit early in the morning that makes my mornings pleasant, makes me like my mornings. But if I start going down too far, if I start going, start watching YouTube videos, I start checking in on my favorite content creators and that kind of stuff, listening to podcasts or whatever, like opening those things up before noon, usually that makes my day worse. So for me, it's like, yeah, I can scroll some Twitter and see what the heck's up in the world. That's fine. But I'm not going to be sitting there looking at any sort of mid or long form content. So I got to cut that out. That's not part of my day, usually until like noonish, when maybe I'll take my break. And if I want to at that point, I might watch something or whatever. Next big one is, at what point does your day start getting bad if you sleep that late, right? So, at what point do you wake up and you're like, shit, I'm behind. Shit, I should be up already. Okay, well, obviously get up before then. So, what do you got to do for that? Maybe you've got to, invest in like an alarm clock that you can keep on the other side of your room, so you can't just snooze it. Maybe you got to, adjust your evening routine. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, is like what other routines are actually more important to you. But yeah, just figure out what time you need to wake up to not feel bad. At least do that. And if you want, obviously you can eventually move it earlier to be like, what time do you need to wake up to feel really good? But that, that takes a little bit of time. It takes a little intentionality. It takes a few maybe, nights without your ideal amount of sleep. Shifting your sleep schedule is not something can be done, just like that. But, you can at least try and start aiming for getting up at a time where you don't feel bad about it, right? Next thing would be maybe your food choices. Some people, they're all in the intermittent fasting thing. Some people, they like to eat a big breakfast. Like me, I've come to actually prefer breakfast. I've done a lot of intermittent fasting, and I just actually have better sustained energy levels, I find, when I eat in the morning. However, if I eat a super carby breakfast, I better have a workout afterward. Otherwise, I'm going to crash. So, just food choices. And then another thing that makes my life worse in the mornings, if I don't get it, is some kind of sunlight. For me, just getting outside and seeing the day to some level, usually like, even if it's just like a 5-minute walk or sitting on my back porch or something like that, it just wakes me up, makes me feel like I'm actually a part of the world. Because when you work from home, it's very easy to just be inside all the time, especially during winter when the weather's been crappy and that sort of thing. So for me, if I skip all morning sunlight, it makes my day worse. So I try not to do that. And then, of course, you got the Huberman telling you that it does all this other kind of amazing stuff for you, which I don't know if it's true, but I definitely feel better. So once you've defined, what you can do to keep from making your day worse in your morning, and you do that, that's already like your V1 routine. That's like first iteration. Just put that into practice. And hopefully it shouldn't be that difficult. Now, if we want to start figuring out how we can optimize this a little bit more, the next step is we want to figure out, how do you actually function in the morning? Because there are different kinds of people. There are morning people. There are people who are kind of like more midday people. There are people who are more actually night owls, right? That's actually kind of like a genetic wiring. And we might have some ability to shift this stuff through consistency and stuff like that. Like you might be able to retrain yourself to become a morning person. I don't know if that's entirely true. Might be different person to person, but like, you got to figure out how do your energy levels ebb and flow throughout the day? Because once you understand how that works, then you can kind of structure your day around that. So like for me, I am not a morning person. Like my brain takes like an hour and a half at least to fully turn on. Like I'm a slow booter. And I found this out because there's this one theory for like creative work and just like professionals in general, where it's like the best thing for you, your best morning routine is just get up, roll out of bed, and immediately spend like an hour and a half working on your number one top priority thing. And often for me, that would be, content creation of some sort. And I tried this, I'd get up, I'd try and go right to work, and man, I couldn't do anything. My brain felt like it was just like frozen. I would just be like staring at the page like, I don't know. And it just would not flow at all. It was just stuck and it sucked, and I was way less efficient. So like, understanding how your brain works is very key. If you're someone who wakes up and is ready to go, well, then a plan like that, going right to your first task in the morning, might be super beneficial to you. For other people, it might actually be having a later morning so that they can have more nighttime. Maybe they're the night owl types who like to really do the majority of their work and stuff like that after like 9 or 10 p.m. I personally get a little energy spike right before bed. So it's like, get to know yourself and make sure that your morning routine matches it. So if you're not a morning person, then don't put high intensity shit right first thing in your morning. Okay. If you are, well then yeah, maybe you want to do that. So once you understand like your energy levels and stuff, the next thing we got to figure out is what is required for you to have a fulfilling day. What is required for you? Okay, like what things that that if I get this, and this in my day, when I go to sleep at night and lie my head down, I'm gonna feel good. I'm gonna feel like nice, had a good day. Okay, so for me, it's a couple of things. I have to make progress in my main projects. I got to spend some time with my family, some good time with my family. I got to have a workout. I got to spend some time outside, and I got to go to bed at a good time. So it's like 5 things for me. And if I have all 5 of those things in one day, then I have a great day, pretty much. So do you know what they are for you? You got to figure this out, because, if you can just figure out what those things are, well, then we can put everything else around it. And so when you have your set of things that are required for you to have a good day, and I'm talking like your average, like general work day, not, weekends and stuff like that might be different. And it'd be worth it even to define what those things are so that you can figure out what your weekend schedule and stuff like that is like. But once you have like the things required for your good day, okay, you want to just say, how can I set up my morning routine to help with this? So for me, here's what I've settled on is I kind of wake up and I spend time with my family in the morning. I just kind of, get myself together, get my contacts in and stuff like that. And, go down and have breakfast with my family, spend some time snuggling with my daughter before she goes to school. I get to talk with my wife a little bit. That feels good to me because, like I said, family is one of the most important things to me, and morning is an opportunity. So I want to do that. I want to grab that with them. And like we already said, I don't do great doing work in the morning. So there's no point to me to get up any earlier. Like, what would I do there? It's like, I already said, I don't like working out early in the morning. I don't like working out when it's dark. I already get up at around 6:15 or so. So like, yeah, there's no reason for me to get up any earlier. It just kind of messes up my day if I do in some ways. So like after my wife starts taking my daughter to school, I just go out, and usually I like to have a workout outside if I can. If it's a nice day, I absolutely try and do that, especially if it's dry out. Then I can hit my time outside and my workout, boom, get it done. And I've had it after breakfast, so I already got some energy in me because I don't like working out on an empty stomach. It feels like shit. At least it does for me. Some people love it, not for me. And then, yeah, after I do that, I just come back in and I do my workday startup routine. I go from there. And so like from about 8-ish usually to 4 or 5 is where I work. And that's where I get my most of my stuff done with my highest energy, most intense stuff usually from that 8 to 12 period. And then I'll have usually calls and things like that in the afternoon. So, what would that look like for you? Take some time to think about it. And after this, I'll, take questions from you guys in the chat and see if, anyone needs some help or feedback to how they can set up their day to make it better. And then the other thing we want to consider as we're setting this up is like, does your plan make for an more enjoyable day? And this is an important thing to highlight because it's very easy to fall into this optimization mindset. But what I found is that the more optimized a routine is, to just be maximally productive or whatever, the less sustainable it tends to be. Okay. And so you got to find that sweet spot in your life where it's like, do I like this enough to keep up with it? Because if you don't, then you're basically just signing up for a short-term sprint. And people have this idea that, well, if I just keep it up long enough, then it'll become second nature. And theoretically, maybe, but how are you going to keep it up for that long? A lot of people, they just keep aiming for that. They keep telling themselves that, and then they never actually get there, and they never actually lock into a routine that works good for them. So, you gotta think about this. And I think it's useful to have some pleasure in the morning, like maybe it's like for you love to take a shower. I know Elon Musk, when I was looking at this stuff, like he claims that having a morning shower was like a life-changing thing for him. And I know a few other people, they can't start their day until they had their nice warm shower. Like my wife, she's addicted to her immediate cup of coffee. Like she, gets the coffee machine set up so that as soon as she wakes up, she already has a cup of coffee ready for her. She doesn't care that Huberman says you should wait 90 minutes to have coffee for your day. It makes her life better to have that cup of coffee immediately. Okay. Like me, I want to make sure that I spend some time with my daughter. Like that's fun for me. I got to snuggle with her, talk with her, see her before a day. Usually I get her, help get her ready, brush her hair, like that kind of stuff. Like that stuff's precious to me. That really matters to me. Maybe you like, instead of having this ultra like morning fast thing, maybe you actually have to have breakfast that you enjoy. Would that help you get up earlier? And sometimes you can kind of sandwich or combine these things where if you're doing something that is unpleasant because it would be good for you, like getting up earlier because you would like to have some time before other stuff in your day, but it feels hard to get up earlier. well, maybe you treat yourself with a more enjoyable breakfast or something like that, so that it kind of offsets it, and it makes it something that you're actually going to want to do. If you try and just be too hard to eat nails for breakfast every kind of day, I just don't see most people pulling it off. And if they can, it's definitely not in a sustainable manner. And so all this stuff that we've covered so far should hopefully put you in a position where you feel like, all right, I can put together a pretty good morning routine. And hopefully when you put it together, it actually feels good. It's not just like gearing up for a challenge. Oh, I'm going to try and push my way through this. Hopefully it'll become second nature eventually. Like it should feel like, yeah, that sounds great. That'll just make my life better, which is the main point of a morning routine. Now, as cool as and faddish and, impactful even as morning routines can be, they're not always the most important routine. There's some that are more important. It's just morning routines tend to grab all the glory because they can be the most flashy. But for me personally, I think what's most impactful for me is my workday startup and workday shutdown routine. Those are the most important for me. For other people, I saw, if you've heard of Mark Manson, he's the guy who wrote Models and The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. He's got a popular self-improvement channel. I saw, just a side note, I saw one video from him years ago, and I'm pretty sure he had this idea about how, morning routines are not all they're cracked up to be. And I think he said that when he started building his business and getting his success, he would literally just start out his whole day just scrolling his phone in his bed for an hour or two, and then eating a Reese's cup every morning. But that's beside the point. The main point that I brought him up for was because he said that he thinks that for him, the shutdown routine is most important. At 9 o'clock, he's got all of his electronics off. He's got no bright lights. He's moving into chill mode so that he can sleep well. I tend to be able to sleep good no matter what. So regardless of how I do my shutdown routine. Other people are not like that at all. They need a very, specialized shutdown routine that kind of sets everything in motion. Because obviously if you're not sleeping enough, it's going to be really difficult to get up any earlier if your morning routine's falling apart. So, think about your day and ask yourself, is the morning routine even the thing that I need to be working on right now? Or is there some other part? And, at some point I'll probably be doing a topic around workday startup and shutdown routines, because I think they're just so useful for so many guys. But yeah, that's kind of what we've got right now. And if any of you guys are looking for a system that you can plug into your routines, the best thing I can recommend to you is our Frontline Man framework, because in that framework, I teach you how to basically put your goals, get super clear, know exactly what you're doing each day. And so how it plugs into the long term. It tells you how to get your habits optimized in a way that's flexible, feels good, and actually leads to change. And then it also gives you a super quick method of optimizing your mindset. And you can do it in 10 minutes. You don't need an hour to get yourself in order. In just 10 minutes of following the Frontline framework, you can get it all together. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, then I would encourage you to click the link in the description here, because I got a free training for you to check it out. And if you like it, well, then you can come check out the Frontline Man community and get in there and start getting awesome results in your life, along with all the other guys who are doing it. So, all right, let's see what the chat's been saying. I'm kind of ignoring you guys. Sorry. I think we got a number of messages in here. Alden says, I spend a lot of time with my family, which is exactly what I want to do and is a goal of mine, although it does take a significant amount of time away from money-making opportunities. Yeah, it does. And so when you're in that kind of position, the big thing you want to be thinking about is which kind of family time is the most impactful? Where am I able to get the most positive connection and positive influence on your family? If it's just kind of you puttering around in the same room, that's not exactly the same impact as everybody having a meal together and you really talking to each one, together, or having real individual time. And so it'd be all right, how can I trade some of the lower value family time, get more of the high value family time, and then see what you can do with that extra period there. And at some point, maybe it is, a shift in your schedule where it's you don't need as much time after the kids get to bed. And instead, you can just go to bed earlier, like, after you get them down or after a little bit of time with your wife, and you get up earlier, and that gives you that extra, buffer time in the morning if you can work with that. Dan W. says, the checklist can be exhausting, especially if it's someone else's routine. One has to figure out what works for them, and then they can be at peace with it. Yeah. Yes, that's 100% true. And I'm not bashing these other people's routines because they can really work. For some people, they really have. You read the testimonials about people who've adopted this stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, it did change my life. And that's awesome. And I would encourage all of you guys, like, if you have something that sounds cool to you, try it. Try your ice bath, try the miracle morning thing, try the 5 a.m. club, see how it goes for you. Run the experiment, because even if not all of it clicks with you, maybe some pieces do. And sometimes you just need to try stuff. And that's how you're going to really end up cobbling together your best routines. Clive said, just joined, thought you had just Jeff Bezos as a guest. Yeah, that'd be sweet. Someday, maybe. I don't know. I'm not particularly interested in him, but can't deny he's massively successful and he's literally changed the world with Amazon. Mikey says, I'd love to have some content for a busy family man who has entrepreneurial ambitions, but also wants time for hobbies and personal interests. Not easy. That's right. It's not easy, but I think I know it's possible. Like, I've experienced it to some degree. It's like, yeah, you can have it all. You just got to figure out how to dial it all in. And it all comes down to that leverage stuff. It's like, how can I get more out of less? And if you can do it right and you can apply it to the areas that really matter, then you can do it all. You just gotta learn how to play that game. It's a different game because, like, self-development has like two distinct phases from what I've found. Is that, like, there's a period when you're beginning self-improvement where all you have to do is try harder and you're going to get better results. You just got to do more, right? But the problem is eventually you reach a point where you max out how much trying harder actually gets you, because you can't do anymore. There's a limited amount of time in the day. You have a limited amount of energy inside of you. And once you hit that point, that's where it becomes tricky and the game shifts. It's like, how can I get more out of less? And that's where I'm deeply fascinated, because I think even the people who are still in the try harder phase, they can still get a lot out of that as well. But the people who are stuck at that try harder plateau, they need it if they want to get that breakthrough to the next level of their life. I agree, Jonathan. YouTube needs to stop suppressing me. Ever since I made some remarks about COVID, I swear my channel views have fallen off significantly. You can actually go back to it. It was like one of those streams I did back in my old attic office where I did it. And then from there, views went down. I'm not saying some of my business decisions and content decisions didn't have anything to do with it, but it seemed too intense. Film Ninja says, I've been spending my mornings with my 3-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter, either doing something with them or getting ready for work with them near. That's great. Yeah. I mean, like, if you got the mornings, you don't want to lose that time. They're going to be young only for so long. Like, my daughter just turned 6. It's like, damn, she's not going to, like, want me to snuggle with her on the couch for too much longer. I want to get all that in while I can. I'm not going to look back on my deathbed and be like, man, I wish I worked harder during that time. It's like, no. He said, but maybe I benefit a lot with going to bed earlier and waking up a bit earlier to have some kind of morning routine. You might. I mean, like, there's definitely, there's a lot of power to just deciding where do you want your free time. And if you want free time to be productive, unless you're wired as a night owl, you probably want that free time to come earlier in the day. And so, maybe the morning's the place to do it. So if, when I'm in that kind of situation, like I said, I'm not a morning work person, but I can get other stuff done in the morning. So that's why I would do my workouts in the morning, right? Because that was something that I didn't have to do later in the day, and I could have more at that time where my brain can focus. I could use it to focus. Kidda says, the optimization point is so real. I have to plan my day to my individual needs and responsibilities, not based on some arbitrary protocol by someone who knows nothing about me. 100%, man. 100%. It's easy to get sucked into it. You can use it as a springboard where it's like, hey, maybe some of this makes sense for me, but don't just swallow it. without at least questioning it. Lewis says, Mark, if you're practicing Lent and want to give something up for the season of Lent for a better morning routine, what would you choose? I'm trying coffee, provided that I can enjoy it on Sundays. Well, I guess the big question would be, is coffee, does that make your day better, giving up coffee? So you would have to have some kind of negative effect from coffee, I would say. Like if you feel like you're addicted to it, you feel like you got a crash from it, etc., then yeah, maybe. For me, coffee's mostly just a net positive on my life, and I don't generally abuse it. So, it probably just kind of decrease some of my focus and energy at certain points, but that's just the way that I respond to it. The big thing that I would probably look at is like, what are some of those indulgences that throw off my routine that don't actually make my life better? They just provide, short-term gratification that is ultimately outweighed by regret or wasted time, etc. So it's like, I'll be looking at things like probably scrolling first, maybe, just time wasted doing something dumb. I don't know. Like that's how I would look at it. Or maybe even, like giving up some little slice of extra entertainment, even if it's not bad for you, you don't have regret around it. It's like, well, how could I give that thing up? Or at least a part of it up, or some of the days of the week, whatever, so that you can do it as a sacrifice or whatever. So yeah, well, it's been great chatting with all you guys. Really enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of this stream. Hopefully you guys have walked away with some really good ideas about how you can level up your morning routines. And I look forward to chatting with you all next week's stream. So thank you for being here. Ooh-yah. Catch you all on the next one. And don't forget, check out the free training I've got in the description. We're probably going to be having a new one here come out in the next week or two. But this one's still very good in my opinion. And I've been told guys get a ton out of it. Kind of changes their perspective on how they're approaching their discipline. So thanks so much. Ooh-yah, everybody. Catch you later. Peace.